We'd been running a long time, and after everything that happened, I'd found myself closer to death than ever before. My body could not take the exhaustion any longer. I was cold, hungry, and thirsty. The violent waters that engulfed me were painfully cold. Somewhere on my right leg I'd been shot, and I was trying desperately to keep myself afloat. It had been hours since they told us to wait for the coming vessels, but we'd been waiting for too long. We sat on the sand completely exhausted. Lines were formed for those that would be the first to board the boats with faces of defeat, hunger, terror, and pain. But when the attacks came, chaos erupted. Some of us ran to the sea, desperately trying to swim out to impede the attacks that followed. A few remained, dropping to the sand, covering their heads as bombs exploded all around them. I heard the screams and the roaring of planes that flew over us, the rain of gunshots that tore through the sand and the men that ran. I wasn't armed at this point, but most men left everything behind. And when we were to jump in the waters, it was of mere desperation that even our hand weapons were forgotten. The Germans had attacked swiftly and ferociously, and we found ourselves begging and hoping for rescue. I could see flashes of my brothers, now fallen, many shot and torn down. It was the only thing that kept me going at that point. The only thing I held tight in my hand was Hester's necklace. Hester. Oh God, Hester, please help me. I fought against the tides, the water overpowering me. I swallowed the salted and blood-stained water, and I gasped for air as I resurfaced. My vision blurred, but I could still make the terror around me. How did it come to this? It could not end here. Not after everything. I grasped desperately to whatever hope I had left in me. A series of sharp pains came as I heard more bullets rip through the water around me. A horrible pain pierced my right shoulder, and I sank again. I couldn't resurface, as much as I tried. My arm was rendered useless. Tom. I heard my name. The tides were not meant to be violent, but with all the chaos and massacre, we were engulfed with a wrath so unforgiving that the blood of fallen men seemed to color the sea. A bomb fell on one of the ships next to us and sent a catastrophic blast throughout the waters and sky. "We're not going to make it," a soldier next to me shouted. "We're not going to make it." My mouth felt dry, and I knew if I didn't get my leg attended, I would bleed out. When more ships arrived, I felt a glimmer of hope. I swam desperately, feeling the weakness taking over, my arm cramping, my lungs begging for air. Tom. I heard my name again. I reached one of the boats, a small fishing smack. A dizziness had come over me, but I swam, and I reached for one of the ropes. I dangled there for only a moment, unaware of the other men around me. I felt a hand grab my coat, and I looked up. It was a young boy. He looked down at me. Only a boy, a fisherman's boy. He attempted to pull me up. "You need to pull yourself up," he said. "Come on, I've got you." I didn't think that I could. I had no more strength left in me. But as I saw the boy reach for me again, I gave a strong pull. When my upper body made it over the edge, I gave another push with both arms, and the boy pulled me in. They were speaking to me, but I couldn't make a word. I lay on my back and looked at the sky above me, the dark clouded sky, with the terrifying planes that flew over us. More people were climbing on the boat, some on their own accord, others helped by the aiding fishermen. I felt a great pain come from my leg, and I looked down to see that the boy had taken off his shirt and was tying it around the wound. A soldier ran over to me and opened a packet of a white powder and poured it over my wounded shoulder. He started applying pressure on it. I thanked them. "All right, let's get to it," the old man yelled. For what seemed like hours I lay there, fighting the need to fall asleep. I didn't want to fall asleep. I feared that I wouldn't wake again. I kept myself awake, forcing myself to look around me. The boy had gone and was helping the other wounded soldiers. "There are too many men on board," the older man shouted. "We can't take any more." Those that had barely pulled themselves on looked at him in disbelief and anger and in horror. "There are too many men on board." "I'm sorry," another fisherman said, as he helped a man off the boat. 2 others had bravely volunteered and jumped off the ship. Others looked around hopelessly, eyeing us, eyeing me. I'm so sorry. A man had just boarded with a bandaged face. He looked around with his one eye, and when he saw that no one moved, he looked back down at the water and slowly began moving himself back in. The boy looked at the older man in disbelief. "We can't leave them," he shouted. "The ship can only handle so much weight," the older man replied. Let's go, a fisherman shouted. The planes had come again. When the unlucky few soldiers finally jumped, the boat began to move. Tears fell down my face at that point. I watched as we slowly began to move away. The boat I had been on previously was now completely covered in flames, along with the water around it. And when the oil-tainted waters erupted in flames, I held my breath in horror as I knew that there were men there. Men were now swimming in this horrific inferno. "Don't sleep," I heard. "Don't sleep." I turned to the side and found Hester there, sitting next to me, just as she had when I'd seen her last. "Don't let yourself fall asleep." And she smiled at me. I wanted to reach out for her, but I knew she wasn't real. She wasn't there. In that moment, I felt something. Someone held my hand. Was it her? "He'll be fine," I heard, a man's voice. I felt confused, an uncontrollable coldness sweeping over me. Tom laid in bed in his feverish state. The blonde man, Chris, had been with him trying to wake him. When the fever wouldn't go down, he'd gone for a doctor. "Let him rest," the doctor told him. "I've given him some medication. The fever should go down." When the doctor left, Chris sat next to Tom, wiping away at his forehead. He knew of Tom's recurring nightmares, the memories that would haunt and torment his mind. On many occasions, he'd scream out and hear things that weren't there. His body would lose control, and he'd need to calm him. "I'm so sorry, Tom," Chris told him. Tom shifted in his sleep. Chris wanted him to waken, but then he grew afraid. How would he react to him being there? Would he still be angry? "Hester," Tom cried out. Chris felt his heart sink. Was that her name? Tom's face tightened again. There was such pain there, such despair. Tears came to his eyes again, and Chris wiped them away. "It's all right," Chris said. "You're all right. Come back to me." He reached out for his hand and he held it. Tom grasped it gently. Did he know it was him, or was he dreaming about Hester? I wept silently as I lay there, watching the rest of the men. Some slept, some were awake. I needed water. I was so thirsty. I wanted to speak out, but I felt like I couldn't. The cold was unbearable, so unusually cold. My bones shook. "Water," I said. Someone touched my hand again, the warmth so familiar. It wasn't Hester, though. I knew that. How could it be? She was dead. Or was I dead? Was I dying? The water splashing in my mouth startled me, telling me otherwise. I almost choked on it, but I realized I was giving it to drink. Was it the boy? No, this was someone else. This person held me. He'd be holding me all along. When I turned to see who it was the blonde man I saw there. The blonde man. Chris. But how could he be here? Confusion came again, and a terrible headache. The cold and heat seemed to come and go in my body, but all I knew was this great thirst, and when Chris gave me more water, I drank. "How did you get here?" I asked him. "I came to see you, to say I'm sorry," he told me. "I'm sorry." The exhaustion was too overwhelming. I needed to sleep. "Don't sleep," she said. "No, Hester. I need to sleep," I told her. "I can't do this anymore. I'm too tired." Yes, mate, it's all right, Chris told me. You need to rest. You can't go to sleep. You can't, she told me. I saw her again. Hester, there by the ship's edge. She was wearing her white nightgown, and her hair loosely curled as always. Tears filled her eyes. You can't die, my love. You mustn't. I wept. I just can't do this anymore, Hester. I can't, I told her. Chris held me tightly. I felt safe. In that moment, all the pain had gone. It was as if everyone on that ship had disappeared, and it was only us three. If I were to die, this would be all right. I'm sorry, I told her. And when she vanished, I let my eyes close finally and sank deep in the sanctuary of Chris's arms. I woke with a start. I didn't know if it was day or night. I thought I felt the wet wooden floors under me, and when my fingers dug into it and found the sheets and the bed I had been laying in, I was relieved. Warmness had embraced me, and I remembered that I had seen Chris there. I had felt him. But was that just a dream? A hallucination, perhaps? Just that I had seen Hester all those times. Hester. Chris. I opened my eyes and I found the darkness of my room. 3 small candles were lit, and the curtains had been closed. It took a while for me to hear the faint sounds of the city outside. Everything was a blur. My ears were ringing as if I'd actually heard the bombs and the explosions. My body aching as if I'd actually been swimming. My mind stuffy and confused. Had I been sick? Yes, I thought. I must have been terribly sick. It must have been at least a few days. But someone had indeed been here. They had changed my clothes, put a glass of water next to my bed, and had changed the sheets and blanket of my bed. Could it have been Chris? I looked at the side of the bed and I gasped at the sleeping figure there. Chris sat sleeping on the floor by the bed, his head resting on his arm on the mattress, his golden hair falling neatly in the white sheets, an arm outstretched towards me, his hand just inches away from mine. His back arched up and down peacefully, as I had seen it the night that he slept here. I didn't know what to do. I simply watched him, listening to his gentle breathing. He'd been here, all this time, and I had heard him in my sleep. I wanted to wake him, to talk to him, to thank him, but God only knew how long he had been here, and I dared not to talk about our incident. I simply looked at him, and I reached out for his hand. At the touch, he shifted. He awakened and looked up at me, his blue eyes clearing, looking around, and then back at me. We didn't speak. I simply looked at him, and perhaps it was me this time that was searching for something in his eyes, for he couldn't look away. Neither of us could. I tugged at his hand, and I pulled him near me. I made room in the side of the bed, and he understood the gesture. He stood, removed his boots, and he went to lay on the bed next to me. Slowly, I began to remember everything. The year is 1944, and I could hear the waves crashing not far away. In my dreams, in my mind, my memory, those will never go away. I shut off my mind, and I allowed myself to pull near next to him, his arm wrapped around me, and he pulls the blanket over us. I feel that safety and comfort again. I close my eyes and I allow myself to go back to sleep, a peaceful sleep without pain or the nightmares. And the surrender this time is completely different.